Okay, so we're going to go through this pretty quickly because you should have got a lot of the stuff already from when the different groups presented, but we'll go through this here. Just stop or look back on anything you need to as you're kind of going through the quiz and also preparing for the test. So first we're going to look at Truman. Obviously Truman's the president we had at end of World War II. He's the one who decided to drop the bombs, end the war in the Pacific. And then he's the first president that kind of takes over and continues as we go into this Cold War era and into the 50s. First thing is we move from a wartime to peacetime economy, and a lot of people were a little scared at this at first because they thought a lot of jobs would be lost as we're no longer the factories are pumping out all this war material and all these tanks and things. So a lot of people thought they're going to lose a lot of money, lose jobs, all these things are going to come about. But actually we were able to transition pretty easily, and a big reason for that was because of consumer spending. So the people had more money that they really weren't spending during World War II, and they had it all saved up now. So a lot of these factories were able to just kind of change from what they were doing and produce on the war material back into peacetime mode and produce all the consumer goods that the people are going to buy and help the economy. Other thing that helped the economy was with regards to tariffs, or another word is tax, and it helps with trade, is that we were able to reduce tariffs or reduce the taxes. So that was able to get more money into our economy through trading with outside countries by lowering this. And this was a huge thing that Truman and the government did to help kind of spur the economy and spur trade between countries. Another thing he did was the fair deal. Obviously it sounds a lot like FDR's New Deal, which it did. It kind of expanded on FDR's New Deal and kind of extended a little bit. Some of the things that Truman did through this was he extended Social Security, extended unemployment compensation, increased minimum wage, what people were making. So he did a lot of these things. The downside was some of Congress opposed this because it expanded the role of government, increased the size, did all these things. And you know, still at a time where a lot of people were looking maybe for that laissez-faire, stay out of people's business. So under Truman, you know, Congress wasn't quite sold completely on the fair deal and what he was trying to do. Big thing, remember, we saw in the video is one huge thing that he did was end segregation in the military. So he's the first president to ever bring a civil rights bill up in front of Congress and get that passed and start to integrate the military and stop this segregation there. So after Truman, Eisenhower takes over Ike, and he becomes president in 1952. First president really to use the media to help his campaign through television advertisement, which television became a huge thing during this time. With advertisement, he really utilized that big time. He really kind of was big with the people. The people really admired him. Obviously, he was a wartime hero, one of our major military leaders, helping us in D-Day and those other types of things. And he kind of fell in the middle between liberals and conservatives, so he had a wide range of people that he appealed to. And his vice president during the time was Richard Nixon, who, again, we saw in the video, had some issues. They thought took some bribes, those things. And then, obviously, later as we get into this year, we'll look more into Nixon when he does become president and his kind of role and everything. Like we talked about, the economy starts to boom, and the big thing is because of the consumer spending, okay? And a few things is the government's role also with the GI Bill. Okay, so the GI Bill was helping veterans and giving them some financial aid to help in college, so further their education, either go to college or vocational, and learning certain skills and things to help them. And by doing this, it helped them gain better employment, make more money, become better educated, and be more prepared as they're doing that. In addition to that, they also got great deals on housing. Okay, so they help veterans be able to buy their first homes, and we'll get into that in just a second, how that really helped spurred the suburbia and the people's moving out to the suburbs. And then finally, the Congress actually cut people's taxes, and obviously by cutting taxes, people have more money and more money to spend. So this helps spur the economy as well, and people are able to buy the products that causes more people to have jobs, more factories, more businesses, all those types of things. And finally, obviously, with the Marshall Plan led to more exports, meaning we're selling to other countries, our military buildup during this time, and as we continued through this Cold War era. And after years of depression, like we talked about, people wanted to buy stuff. They had money spent up, so they wanted to buy all these new consumer goods, and television is going to go a long way to advertising these things as that, and people pumping money into the economy. So technology and industry was huge during this time. Companies become bigger, franchises more popular. You can see right here McDonald's. Other companies pop up and become really big during this time because people have money to spend. The transistor was invented through a government grant, kind of developed it. This was kind of the forerunner that led to eventually our computers that we know today. So these all kind of started in the late 40s into the 50s. Huge breakthroughs in medicine. One of the biggest thing by Dr. John Salk developed the polio vaccine. Okay, we know FDR obviously was inflicted by this. He had this issue. Now with the polio vaccine, we have no issues, nothing since this time again. We also saw a big transition in the type of jobs that were out there. Before this time, before World War II, most of the jobs out there are blue-collar jobs, or jobs that people hands-on, working in factories, working in steel mills, working all these things. And we saw a huge transition more into the white-collar jobs, where we had people working in offices, working at sales counters, wearing coats, suits, ties. So we saw a big transition in the types of jobs that were out there as well. And after World War II, you can see after World War II, after the Korean War, most people had put off marriage, put off everything while the men were off at war. But once they came home, we had a huge baby boom. Okay, these new married couples from 46 to 64, we had a huge expansion. We had 65 million children born in the U.S. just in those basically 20 years. So just a huge increase in population during this time. And this era is known as the baby boom. So for various reasons from that, here's some images you can kind of look at. And also increase another thing in sales of clothing, food, pump more money into it, more industries kind of popping up during this time. And obviously all these new families, new kids, new everything, they need a place to live. So this is where the term suburbia comes about, where people started moving out from the cities out to the suburbs, and they needed places to live. And there wasn't many places because in the city there wasn't enough housing, so they had to move out and build these houses quickly and cheaply. So this is kind of following the old Henry Ford assembly lines to build things quicker and cheaper so more people can afford it. That's what happened out in the suburbs. And Levittown is what it was known at, came about. You can see no cash required for veterans, so these veterans got a great deal on housing. You can own a house for $67 a month. You know, a little over $10,000 you can own your own home during this time. You can see the before pictures of basically just open fields, and then afterwards the suburbs of just housing and tracks everywhere and how quickly they popped up. And you can even see pictures here in Huntington Beach. If you look at old pictures of basically just farmlands and flat land everywhere to now the suburbs and housing tracks everywhere. Which obviously led to people needed cars because they still worked in the city. They needed to get from the suburbs into the city, so they needed now 2 cars. So the single car family kind of went away. So another huge explosion in the car industry, which obviously again helped spur the economy during this time because housing needed 2s, and it helped lead to other many businesses like gas attendants, the drive-in theaters, the drive-up restaurants, all those different types of things. Women's roles. That was one thing that probably took a little bit of step back during this time. During World War II, a lot of women were working the jobs taken by the men, but when the men came home, the women were expected again to kind of go back to their old roles, expected to take care of the children, take care of the home while the man was off working. Okay? And the culture and the media really encouraged this role through television, through ads, through movies. They really reinforced this role of the woman as the housewife staying at home and the man off working. This is, I'm not going to go through all this, but you can kind of take a look at it. This was actually in textbooks in the 50s for high school kids to look at, and it showed people how to be a good wife, okay, from, you know, having the dinner ready to make sure you listen to them, and really what was expected of a wife, okay, really, again, just continue to emphasize the role of the woman and what they were expected to be at that time. The only thing some of them, not everyone kind of agreed with the way this whole culture was going with the suburbs, the white-collar jobs, suit, tie. Some people were kind of a little upset at this conformity where everyone kind of looking the same, doing the same, everything's the same. So a lot of people kind of had some issues with this during this time. Okay, television obviously had a huge impact during this time. It became more affordable. Most families owned a television set. Families would gather around to be a big event every night and watch TV. And again, same thing. The same roles were kind of shown over and again from the family roles and what it was like to be a family. From the comedies, Father's Knows Best. I Love Lucy was probably one of the biggest one.
But whatever it is, do it later.
Lucille Ball was probably one of the biggest actresses during this time.
One of these days. One of these days.
Okay, westerns, all these things from game shows. Big thing, teenagers. Okay, with the economy doing so great, kids were able to stay in school. They didn't have to go to work like they did during the Great Depression, so they had more leisure time, more fun. Had a huge impact on culture. Rock and roll obviously had a huge impact during this time. Guys like Elvis Presley. And teenagers were buying the records. They were buying the music, and it led to this huge generation gap between the kids, the teenagers, and their parents. They just didn't understand what they were doing. I mean, TV shows like the Ed Sullivan Show wouldn't even show Elvis from the waist down because they thought they were corrupting kids by the way they would dance, all those things. So rock and roll became huge during this time. Bill Haley and the Comets were one of the first groups out really doing this. You can kind of see Jerry Lee Lewis, obviously huge. It's kind of flip through some pictures, you can kind of see. Huge African-American influence from James Brown to Little Richie. Had a huge impact on the culture and rock and roll as well. And a little bit you heard from the group as well, from the beat movement, from poetry and artistic view as well. Kind of led to a huge thing, and most of this, again, was led by the teenagers and what they were doing during this time. Okay? So again, if you have to look back, those things that you're looking through the quiz, preparing for the test, make sure you kind of look at all those things. Okay?